Om Maganati Miranda Shagana Gana Sarakya Chaksur Meditam Yana Tajmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobistam Stapitam Yana Bhutare Swayam Rupa Garamayam Darati Swaparantikam Vandeham Siguru Tera Pakaramanam Sriganun Vaishnavam Sta Sirupam Sagaritam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Stam Sadevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sirada Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shibishikhan Vitam Sha Narayanam Namaskitam Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devam Sarasatam Vyasam Tato Jodhira Nashta Prayashu Badveshu Nityam Bhagavata Bhagavati Uttamashoki Bhakti Bhavati Naishtaki Nigama Kalparurugari Ramparam Shukam Rita Javisamitam Pipata Bhagatam Rashamari Mahora Horishikabhavi Bhagaham Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Thanks for joining us, Divya, right there at the starting gun. Jimmy and Taruni, Anjali, Sundari Priya, as well as Justin Sorensen and Jean. Thank you. We barely made it this morning. There was a power outage at 4:30 a.m. The power came back at 5:30, but the computer, even though I plugged it into the battery source, it had turned off, and it took forever, like 10 minutes to turn it on, 10 minutes to get Zoom up, and 10 minutes to get Facebook up. And if you're a Mac owner, you know what is referred to when you talk about the rainbow wheel of death. So I've been dealing with the perennially spinning Macintosh rainbow wheel of death in order to get to you on time. By Krishna's arrangement, we're only a minute or so late this morning. So thanks very much for being there, waiting for me with some measure of faith that we'd make it. There are a few more challenges being in a rural area than in an urban area, at least at this point in time. But gee, look behind me and see all the advantages of being in a rural area. Beautiful temple on 14 acres of land. The right to have animals like parrots and peacocks, llamas, rabbits, one chicken, cows, and a beautiful unobstructed view of agricultural fields in all directions. Anyway, be that as it may, we're with you this morning on Transcendental Tuesday and looking forward to reviewing this verse once again, one of the most important verses of the whole Srimad Bhagavatam. It talks about what will become of us, denizens, residents of the dark Kali Yuga age, once Lord Krishna had left his pastimes off and went back to the spiritual world. So here we go, jumping in for the second day in a row, 43rd verse, 3rd chapter, 1st canto, Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishna sadam apagate dharmaganabhisa karo nasta drishamesha paranako dunoditaha. Thanks for joining us, Manasa Ganga. Appreciate it. This Bhagavad Purana is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. Yesterday we quoted this verse. Prakash hasn't joined us yet, so we don't have our verse searcher. But Ram Kishore joined us. Thank you. Hare Krishna Ram Kishore. We'll see if Prakash comes on board. He requested me a recommendation letter to take the Bhakti Shastra course. He and his wife Sachi. Also Kruti Nagaraj taking the course, Ankar Joshi. It's given by Gopal Hari, a wonderfully intelligent, intellectually gifted devotee from Boise, Idaho. So my blessings to all of you who listen to these Facebook Live podcasts regularly in your pursuit of excellence by way of taking the Bhakti Shastra course and achieving a higher degree of proficiency and conversancy in the great transcendental literature, the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Nectar Devotion, etc., etc. Good morning, Jaya Sri Radhe. Thanks for joining us from Florida. So here we are, The translation, verse Anyatu eva majanata shrutpane vipasate tepi chati taranti eva mitu shruti parayanaha. Now in the Kali Yuga age, none of us are on the same level as people had been in previous ages. Just take an example. When Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita, which was 5,000 years ago, it was just at the end of the previous age, the Dwapara age. And in that age, people lived for 1,000 years, and they were much more pure. The air was pure, the water was pure. They had more vigor, they had more intellectual prowess, and there were less distractions, or less technology, less microwaves in the air, no cell phone towers, no TVs. The ether was pure and unpolluted in those days. So Krishna talks about what it takes to become his devotee. No cheap thing. It says, Ichadvesha samudin dvanbhamo samaham savuti sargayanti parantapa. Those who are free from illusion, who are not entangled in duality, hot and cold, honor and dishonor, health and ill health. Yesham tu antigadam papam, those who have not committed any sins, not only in this life, but in many, many previous lives as well. He says, those can devote themselves to me in great and transcendental faith. The standard is really high. You can see that. And it wasn't that difficult for people of that previous age to meet that standard. But it's impossible as things transitioned, slid down from Dwarka to Kali Yuga. People live only 100 years. Everything is impure. The air is impure. The water is impure. The food you eat has been tainted with all kinds of chemical fertilizers. It just goes on and on and on and on and on and on. We're not particularly interested or attuned to spiritual life as a rule. So Krishna, if he kept the standard that he described to Arjuna, none of us would have a chance. But God is, if nothing else, he's merciful. That is his greatest quality. And that is we pin our hopes on the mercy of God, because we don't deserve God consciousness. We don't deserve Krishna consciousness. We don't deserve to go back to the spiritual world. But mercy is all about, mercy is not earned. Mercy is not about things that you deserve. Mercy is about what you don't deserve. But there has to be some standard, right? There has to be some desire. You don't get anything in this world unless you desire it. So if amongst all of the people who are misled by materialistic leaders and by the materialistic culture and advertising, there happens to be a few. Manusyanam sasrishu kastyad yatati yatataram asidaram kastyad mam vedi tatparaha. Thanks for joining us, Bear Montes, Radhesham. If in this ocean of faults there are a few people, and again, we don't have the piety, we don't have the intellectuality, we don't have the austerities behind us, we would not be qualified by any standard as described by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. But Lord Chaitanya, who is Krishna's devotional incarnation, appeared in this Kali Yuga 500 years ago. And Vairaga Vidya Nija Bhakti no Shikshartam Eka Purusha Paranam, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, called the Golden Avatar because his color was golden. Parana Purusha. He's the same as Krishna. Krishna is also Parana Purusha. He's the oldest personality. Before Shiva, before Ganesh, before Brahma, before the sun and the moon, there was Krishna. Before Vishnu even, there was Krishna. And that same Parana Purusha has come not in a blackish color in this Kali Yuga age, but in a golden color. Vairaga Bija Nija Bhakti no Shikshartam. Shikshartam means teaches. And he's teaching by example. He's not just teaching by precept, but by example. The teacher may tell the students how to write cursive. Teacher may stand up at the blackboard and write cursive on the blackboard and tell the students to write cursive in their notebooks. But if one student is particularly slow, then the teacher will take it a step further and sit down. The teacher will sit down on that little tiny chair with that little tiny desk and cram his or her legs in there with the student, take the student's hand, and then write cursive, make the loops, the A's, the P's, the B's, the D's with the student. That's what Krishna does in the form of Lord Chaitanya. We're slow. We don't get it. So it's not enough just to give us the precept, but being the perfect teacher and the most compassionate teacher, the Lord comes down to our level, accepts a human-like form, and by his own example shows us what to do to go home back to Godhead. Shiksartameka Purusha Parana, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Sararabhari. And what Lord Chaitanya did, and he made it real simple. He didn't do a lot of things. He didn't even do 2 or 3 things. He just made it real simple, unequivocal, very direct. In the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the specific mission of Lord Chaitanya is described. Krishna Varna Titsa Krishna. Varna means color. So previously God, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, came in the sham color of a monsoon cloud during the rainy season. But that was in the last age, the Dwarka age. But in this age, he's Akrishna. God comes not as in a darkish color, but he comes in a golden color as the golden avatar, otherwise known as Gauranga. Krishna Vanitisa Krishna Sangha Pangarva Yaga Sankirtana Prayir. And his focus will be on chanting the Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Suyagyam, that will be the sacrifice. That will be the prescription to purify the fallen souls in this age of Kali and to equip them to go back to home, back to Yada. Now, you know that in the pharmacy there are many prescriptions depending on the type of disease and the severity of it. So what might have been good on another occasion may not be good on this occasion. So similarly, what might have been effective in previous ages is no longer effective in this age. It's not possible for us to do yoga and austerities and excavate the Lord from voluminous scriptures. So the prescription for this age is very simple. Just chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Sumedasa, and it's predicted that Lord Chaitanya's followers will be those who have not completely lost all brain substance. Those who are sumedasa, who are intelligent enough to understand that the purpose of life is not just eating, sleeping, mating, defending, but going back to home, back to God. Those will comprise the followers of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So that's kind of predicted in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna set the standard high, but even in the same Bhagavad Gita, he does sort of intimate what Lord Chaitanya's mission will be and who Lord Chaitanya's constituents will be in this verse. Anya tu evam ajana. Anya means, others who are less fortunate, who are shorter lived. In other words, the coming residents of Kali. Evam tu ajanata. Ajanata means we don't know much about spiritual life. Neither do we have much interest, nor do we have the time to pursue spiritual life seriously. Our lifespan is 70 or 80 years at most. However, even the common man, which is me, I don't know about you, but I'm a common man, Shrut Banebu Upashate, just by hearing, Tepi Chantarata, one will transcend the bonds of birth, death, disease, and old age, Mritu Smriti Parayanaha, and achieve freedom from birth and death. Just by hearing. Prabhupada says, as for the common man, if he is a good soul, then there's a chance for advancement by hearing. No need to change his position. No need to leave the hearth and home. No need to change your career. No need to go into the high Ointis and find a cave to live in. Prabhupada says one should just give up the endeavor to understand the absolute truth by speculative reasoning. Yoga is good, but yoga is no longer the way that you're going to. I mean, if we told you what real yoga is, committed yoga is, even the yogis would faint in this day and age. So yoga is okay for keeping yourself fit and body and soul together. But the real yoga for this age is to serve the Lord. Yoga you can do 1 hour a day for health. But bhakti yoga, yoga of love and devotion, you can do 24 hours a day in order to connect yourself in service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and go back to home, back to Godhead at the end of this life. One should learn to be a servant of those who are in knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then there's no disqualification. It doesn't matter how low one may have fallen in this age of Kali. The ability of the Lord to resurrect you or to rectify you is greater than our ability to go astray. God's mercy is greater than any bad choices or faults we may have had. That's the title of today's talk, Turning Bell Metal into Gold. Sanatan Goswami, a perfected Acharya, Vaishnava devotee of the Lord who lived 500 years ago, he wrote these words, Yata Kanchanantam Yati, Kamsam Rasha Vidhanata, Tata Diksha Vidhanena, Dvijatvam Jayate Ninam. And you may have heard of the alchemical process, something that was purported to have been practiced in the Middle Ages, where the same process would be repeated over and over and over and over and over again. Nothing new, simply a matter of repeating. And in fact, it was important to repeat exactly each successive practice or procedure exactly without any deviation from the previous one, over and over, maybe hundreds or thousands of times. Then, at a certain point, when the repetition had come to a sufficient level, the bell metal would turn into gold. So it wasn't you did a lot of different procedures and finally you found the right procedure. No, it was a question of consistently doing the same procedure, exactly the same, over and over and over again in order to get the miraculous results. And isn't that exactly different from the emphasis in Kali Yuga? Our attention span is so short, we can't stick to anything for more than 1 or 2 seconds. We're here, there. We're just like the pigeon. Can't focus on anything. So we have to develop this faith in repeated hearing. The problem is we hear something once or twice, and then we hear the same thing a second or third time, and we've lost interest. We're only interested in new things. We're only interested in different stimuli all the time. If it's not new, if we're not learning something new, if we're not adding something to our repertoire, something we can repeat and show off in front of our friends, how quickly we lose interest. And we see this even among devotees. Someone's playing some other tape somewhere else in the house. It's coming muffled through the walls. It's a mild distraction here. I'll try to focus. That's what we're talking about, right? Is focusing. So this is just one more challenge to my ability to focus on the task at hand and not lose my train of thought. So we find even devotees, they yawn, they're in Bhagavatam class, or they're listening to a talk online. It's like, oh yeah, I've heard this before, and they can hardly stay awake. It doesn't pique their interest. But the process is a process that involves faith. It is the qualification of a common man as opposed to an intellectual or mundaner. Mundane derives from the Sanskrit word muni. Munis were scholars, and they would debate each other all the time. And the important thing for a muni was to always come up with new theories, new hypotheses, to be always spinning out newer, and one-upping others. That's the definition of mundane. You always want newer and newer material. I remember when this song by MC Yogi came out, a number of years ago. Sri Krishna, your pure charisma, your flute playing is so intoxicating, singing your song down in Vrindavan, pleasing the gopis and all the bhakti yogis. In a trance you dance a divine romance of Rasa Lila with Radharani. Your divine pastimes are so sublime, they please the heart and refresh the mind. They bring relief just like the monsoon after the lingering heat. You lifted a mountain with your little finger. You're the sweet butter thief known as Baby Gopal, the killer of Kamsa, the lover of Radha. Your complexion's dark blue like the ocean. I offer my devotion with all of my emotion. We heard this song. Jai Krishna came to me one Sunday feast. He said, have you heard this? He had it on his iPod, and we listened to it. We said, wow, MC Yoga, the Krishna love song, you know, any other songs about Ganesh and Hanuman. We thought that was just so cool. So I invited him to come to the Festival of Colors. And he did. He came to the Festival of Colors a couple of years and did a great job. I mean, I don't think there's anybody, any one single person, MC Yoga and DJ Drez, those two would just get a crowd of thousands and thousands of people going, dancing, singing, top of their lungs. Just two people. They do more. They had more Shakti for that than even some of the bigger bands with, 8 or 10 members and vocalists and all. Gifted by God in that way. But the thing is, by the time I invited him to come, which obviously was a lapse of a year or so, he'd gone past the Krishna song. Because when you're a commercial artist, you can't just make 1 or 2 songs and then keep them. You have to always be inventing fresh songs and newer lyrics. If you don't produce a new CD every year, you're not going to be able to pay your bills without another job. And so by the time he came to do the Festival of Colors, and there were 25,000, I can't wait for him to sing the Krishna song. I can't wait for him to sing Ganesh or Hanuman. But, and no disrespect intended, because that's just the nature of the beast, but he'd already forgotten them. I mean, he couldn't sing those songs to save his life, because they were for a specific time, for a specific place, and to raise income, to pay his bills in a past year. And now he was already doing other songs about other things and expanding his repertoire and expanding his fan base. Basically, the problem is you have to become a crowd pleaser. To please the greatest number of people, you have to lower the common denominator. So after a couple of years, I said, can you do the Krishna? Can you do the Krishna love song? I mean, we're at the Krishna temple, we're having a Krishna festival. And he's such a nice guy. He didn't want to say no or anything, but he kind of nodded his head yes. And I thought, well, he's going to come. He went, next song. But he didn't do the Krishna love song. In fact, he dedicated the whole, standing on the stage, looking at the Krishna temple, dedicated the whole performance to Dr. Spock. So I was thinking like, but that's the nature of the business. That's the nature of the entertainment world in the Kali Yuga. People want newer things. If you want to advance in spiritual life, if you want to have that magical transformation of having your heart go from crass bell metal to gold, if you want to melt like butter in heat, if you want your heart to melt in love of Krishna, tears to come from your eyes and your hackles to rise and goose. If you want to experience life on that level, you have to stay with the one thing, because it's not about fresher and fresher. It's not about more and more stimuli, newer and newer things. It's about purification. And here's the irony. All these newer and newer things, it's really just the same thing appearing in a different dress. There is nothing new in the material world. You can have 1,000 songs on about 1,000 different subject matters, and basically they're all about eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Just mixed up in a different way. What is really new, once you get deeper into it, what is really new and fresh and never stale are the topics about Krishna, even though they may be, certain elements of it may be repetitive. Now, why is Krishna Katha the actual only thing that's fresh, the only thing that's new in all of the 3 worlds? Well, several reasons. One is, the more you hear, and in fact, the more you hear the same things over and over again, you make more advancement when you're hearing the same thing for the 100th time than you do when you're hearing a new thing for the first time. That's why sometimes speakers, they feel pressure to come up with new information. They shouldn't. Prabhupada did not give us a lot of new information. You go over the corpus of Prabhupada's lectures and Prabhupada's works, there's a certain standard body of information, and he looks at it from 1,000 different angles. Now, the reason that should stay fresh for the serious practitioner is that when you hear the same thing for the 50th or 75th time, and you are bright and you're attentive and your ears are open and you're receptive, you get purified. And the more often you hear the same thing, the greater the purification is. So you're not the same person on the 50th time you heard that as you were in the 48th time or the 46th time or the 45th. So you're a different person. You have fresher and newer insights. That's one reason. That you're always in a state of change and evolution. You're never stuck in the same place. And the second reason is Tesham evanu kampartam aham agyanashama nisyami atma bhavishto jnana deepana bhashana. Second reason is God's in your heart. He's in your heart. He's your well-wishing friend. And as you're hearing externally with faith, he's working internally to clean all the junk out of your heart. We've had so many different previous incarnations in many different species of life. There are innumerable negative impressions that are antithetical to spiritual life, which get in the way of the clear vision of Krishna and the devotees in the spiritual world. And we can't remove those obstacles on our own. It requires no less a power than the omnipotent Lord from within the heart to pluck those impressions from millions of previous lives and magically make them disappear. Kechit kevala bhaktya vasudeva parai agam dutmarti apnoti niharam ivavashkara. The effect of the Lord working on our behalf from within the heart is like the powerful effect of the rising sun. In the hours before dawn, we lived in Los Angeles for 10 years in the temples in Culver City, which is only 2 or 3 miles from the ocean. So in the mornings, especially in the winter, there would be a deep fog, always in the morning, rolling in from the ocean. It would be overcast almost every LA day. It's funny because LA is known for bright and clear skies and sunshine, but many of the days, especially in West LA, start kind of ominously with a overcast and cloud cover, fog. But by 10 o'clock, all of that's been burned off by the powerful sun. So in the same way, whatever disqualification, whatever shortcomings, whatever negative impressions, and there's a lot of them, and they cannot be dislodged by our own efforts. They are dissipated by the Lord just in the same way that fog is dissipated by the rising sun. So those distractions which drag us down and contaminate us are removed by the Lord. So that's another reason why, if you faithfully hear repetitively, the material is always fresh. They're always, the points are there, but it's like we couldn't hear them. We couldn't appreciate them. We couldn't see them with our mind's eye. So as the Lord works from within, does his part, as we do our part by hearing from without, anything that's antithetical, anything that's a stumbling block or an obstacle towards our rising progressively one level after another, and ultimately going back to home, back to Godhead, the Lord works with us to purify us, to make us newer and newer and newer and newer people, and to also remove the obstacles which have been with us since time immemorial. So those are a couple of amongst several considerations as to why Krishna consciousness or devotional service is ever fresh. And let's take the example of Yamunacharya. Yamunacharya was a king Good morning, Rakesh. Prashant's with us now. So let it happen. Bring it on, Prashant. He's giving us some lyrics. He put the Krishna lyrics of the Krishna love song on there. Oh my gosh. So what was it? Oh yeah, Yamunacharya was a king, and especially in old days, kings they had a lot of sense gratification at their disposal. They could have many wives. They could, there were certain licenses, latitude in terms of the king's behavior, which were not afforded to the common man. But after becoming a devotee of the Lord, after getting his heart purified from within by the Lord, and evolving, maturing as a spiritual practitioner, Yamunacharya said, Yadavi mama cheta Krishna pararavinda nava navarasha dumani adyanti maranchit tadavare bata nari sangame bhavati mukha shushta nistivanam cha. He said, before I was a devotee, there'd be intoxication, there'd be sex, there'd be different gourmet foods or all kinds of allurements and different varieties of sense gratification, which were offered to me by the servants and the people in the palace and all like that. And he said, as long as I wasn't Krishna conscious, these things occupied my time. But since I have mama cheta, since my heart has been captured by that bluish-black, lotus-eyed Lord who plays his flute on the bank of the river underneath the moonlight, now I'm experiencing newer and newer and fresher realizations. Whereas before, with eating, sleeping, mating, defending, my life had just gotten stale, repetitive, hackneyed. It was, in effect, chewing that which is already chewed. But now that I've immersed myself in the kata, now that I've dedicated myself to faithful and repetitive hearing from the right sources, I'm experiencing newer and newer realizations. Having clasped the lotus feet of Govinda, Krishna will make it his business that if you faithfully and attentively hear, he will make it his business that you'll never get bored. You have to have faith in him in that way. And in fact, if you do, listen attentively and alertly and with faith that the process is working, it will work as confirmed by Yamunacharya. He says, since I become Krishna conscious, nava rasa. Rasa means taste. Like mango. Those of you who have tasted a mango, it's just so palatable and relishable and juicy. That's what rasa is. So in Krishna consciousness, Yamunacharya says, nava rasa. I'm experiencing this incredible taste which never gets stale. It's always fresh. It's always newer. And then he says, the clincher is, what's the thing that everybody in the material world who's ignorant of Krishna is mad after? What's the number one motivator in the material world? Freud got it right. He said, lacking God consciousness, sex is what makes the world go round. So it motivates anyone. Yamunacharya has completely stepped back from that. To the point he says, my previous life, sex was the highest thing, the highest pleasure. It was the greatest motivator. But my current life as a practicing Krishna conscious bhakti yoga, when I think of sex life, and this, he intends no disrespect to women, it's just that men tend to think of women in terms of exploiting them for their own temporary sense gratification. So when he thinks of that aspect of sex life, the sense gratificatory aspects of it, which are temporary and short-lived, he says, my lips curl in distaste. Nava rasha dumania. Tadavari bata nari sangame shmayamane bhavati mukha nishti mishtimanam cha. Krishna removes those negative impressions. We've had sex life since millions and millions of births and millions of peoples. We've had family, we have had children, over and over and over and over again. So that's a shmaran. That memory, the impression is certainly very deeply embedded. So Yamunacharya says, Krishna, working with me from within the heart, has dissipated those impressions of past sense gratification, past distractions, just like the sun dissipates the fog. And I don't even think about them anymore. All I think about is clinging fast to the lotus feet of Krishna by attentively and consistently hearing his katha from pure devotees. But if perchance and occasionally my thoughts do wander to my past life and my sexual history, at that time my lips curl in distaste at the thought. In the Bhagavad Gita, 18th verse, 10th chapter, Krishna has already been speaking to Arjuna. He's already spoken like 500 verses. And a lot of the material is covered over and over and over again. Krishna's teaching on a very basic level in the Bhagavad Gita, the Song of God. He's going A, B, C, D, and he's making it very simple, and he's repeating himself. You know, if you're a parent, you know how many times you have to repeat yourself to get through to the child. So we're pretty well along in the Bhagavad Gita. 3/4 of it is past us. Krishna has brought up a number of different points about the supremacy of bhakti yoga and his supremacy above and beyond all the other gods and demigods. And yet, not only has Arjuna not become tired of hearing, but he's become even more keen to hear. It's not like he's saying, okay, Krishna, let's take a break. That's enough for today. In the 10th chapter, after having already heard from Krishna, I don't know who's playing that tape somewhere. Anyway, focus, Caru. In the 10th chapter, after already having heard from Krishna for 45 minutes or so, Arjuna's keenness is reflected in this verse where he says to Krishna, Vistarein atmano yogam vibhutim cha janardam bhuyakatir tripto hi shrinvato nasti memitam. He says, Krishna, please describe again. Krishna has already repeated himself to some degree. But Arjuna's not saying, okay, we've covered that. How about something new? It's not what he's saying. They've been over certain things several times. He's saying, go over them again. Repeat yourself in more detail. Let's get down even further into nooks and crannies and the nitty-gritty of bhakti yoga. Please describe in detail the mystic power of your opulences. I am never satiated in hearing about you, for the more I hear, the more I want to taste the nectar of your words. And this is a preface, in fact, to 2 verses which are described, the universal form, the opulence of the absolute, where Krishna begins to just throw out here and there a few little tidbits, a few little minor indications of the extent of his qualities and glories. That's another reason why it's always fresh, because you never come to the end of Krishna's qualities and glories. Let me see if I can remember the words to this poem. Krishna says to Arjuna, I'm paraphrasing here. Krishna says to Arjuna, oh, I can't remember even the first line. Oh, Arjuna, do not be misled. Everything is strong in me as pearls on a thread. I'm the taste of water. I'm the light of the sun and the moon. I'm the syllable Om. I'm the strength of the strong. I'm the fragrance of the earth. I'm the forest fire bright red. I'm the blazing sunset. I'm the alphabet from A to Z. From me all things arise. I'm the seed of everything. From me all things arise. I'm the faith of great men. I'm the wisdom of the wise. I am the Paramatma dwelling in everyone's heart. I am the life of all that lives. I am the ending, middle, and start. I am the sacred Vishnu and of all sorts of lights. I am the sun, stars, and moon at night. I am the vigor of the strong, not triggered by greed or lust. That sex life comes from me, which is righteous, pure, and just. The Himalayan mountains, unshakable, unbreakable, indicate me. I am the unlimited, endless ocean of vegetation. I am the banyan tree. I am Kandharpa, god of love, like Cupid with his bow. Of cows I am Sarabi, who gives milk in limitless flow. Of hymns I am Gayatri, of seasons I am spring, of months I am November, time of peace and harvesting. Of beasts I am the lion, of men I am the king. I am Yama, lord of death, who judges everything. Of weapons I am the thunderbolt, of conquerors I am time. Of rivers I am Ganges, flowing liquid and sublime. I am the wind that purifies the spirit apart from the flesh. I am logic, pure, precise. I am all-devouring death. All this is but an indication. There is no end to my manifestations. Every beautiful and opulent creation springs from but a spark of my radiation. What need to go on, Arjuna, with a more exhaustive list? A tiny part of me pervades all that exists. Because I create the dual worlds of spirit and flesh, the wise prioritize my service, keeping their hearts forever fresh. My pure devotees think of me and follow me all the time, discussing me incessantly. I am theirs and they are mine. Because they serve with love and never swerve aside, from within their hearts I cause ignorance to subside. The wattage of transcendental knowledge I shine from within so bright, and in deep parental affection guide them to the light. The Lord's qualities and opulences are unlimited, and that's yet a third reason why we never get tired of hearing the endless list of his qualities and pastimes. Ananta Shesha, upon whom Lord Vishnu Narayan rests, has millions and millions of hoods, and since millions and millions of years he's been trying to reach the end of Krishna's qualities and pastimes unsuccessfully. It is said that one can never be satiated even though one continuously hears the transcendental pastimes of Krishna, who is glorified by excellent prayers. Just take our basic scenario that we're working from and throughout all of these classes, and we've been going on for months and months now. The basic scenario is Maharaj Pariksit has 7 days to live. So he maintains a vigil on the banks of the Ganges/Ramuna, and Sukadeva Goswami begins to speak the glories of Krishna. Goes for 7 days and nights, during which time neither Pariksit nor Sukadeva take food or water. And obviously they're revisiting different points, different pastimes, different philosophical viewpoints. There is repetition throughout the pages of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and yet there is no satiation. Pariksit is ever more eager as the days go on to hear. You'd think after fasting for day 2, he'd start to get distracted. When he's on the 4th day without food and even water, he would be beside himself. He said, can we finish this so I can get something to eat? Can somebody bring me a drink of water? I'm dying of thirst here. You would think that the challenge to not be distracted would be greater as each progressive day of the fast went on. But just the opposite is true. His desire for drinking and eating, whatever it might have been at the beginning, lessened each and every day. Came to nil because his soul was being filled with the nectar of Krishna consciousness. He was being transformed moment after moment, day after day. And I'll just finish by sharing with you, I think I may have mentioned my old friend before, who for me personifies this characteristic of faithful hearing. Pranjivan Popat passed away, I think it was like 15 years ago. He was my best friend when I was a life membership director in Los Angeles. His whole family had a history of heart disease. His brothers passed away in their 40s, and he lived to be 64. He was a devotee for the last 15 years of his life. He got initiated by Lokanath Maharaj during the last couple of years of his life. Eventually, it was a heart attack that took him while he was chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. But the wonderful thing about Pranjivan, whenever you got together, he would always say, can we sit down for 5 minutes and discuss Bhagavad Gita? So he'd sit down, and he would always insist that I lead the class. Well, I could say something that I know Pranjivan had heard 1,000 times before. During the class, I could say, you're not the body. And Pranjivan's reaction was always as if he was hearing it for the first time. Ah, aha, It was such a joy to give a class when Pranjivan was sitting amongst the listeners, because he was aha, everything he was hearing as if it was for the first time. And that's not untrue, because there's so much to the glories of the Lord. The Lord is working from within the heart to remove the darkness, the fog, so we can see clearly, and we're becoming more mature in our spiritual life. Pranjivan went from being a beer-drinking, meat-eating sense gratifier to a pure devotee of the Lord in a very, very short period of time. See that parrot behind me? That's him shouting out in the hallway. Because of his tendency for faithful hearing. He wasn't a big scholar. He wasn't a yogi. He wasn't an intellectual. He was just a common man. After being kicked out of Uganda with the entirety of the Indian community, he pulled his life together in downtown Los Angeles, rented a little kiosk in the bottom of the Transamerican Insurance building downtown, and he sold little snacks to maintain his family, put his son through pharmacy school at USC. A very typical common man, no brilliant characteristics. And yet from the first time he met a devotee, he went back to his apartment on Oxford Street in downtown LA. He finished his shift wherever he's working, came up and opened and he went to reach for the door of his apartment, and Sri Govinda had been waiting for him. And Sri Govinda opened the door from the inside. Sri Govinda was quite tall, and Pranjivan was quite short. And Pranjivan had a 6-pack of beer under his arm. And when the door opened mystically, by itself it seemed, he saw the midsection of a devotee with a kurta and below it a dhoti. So he had this beer, and he looked up, and it was with wonder and amazement, and also a measure of embarrassment, because he had this beer under 6-pack, and his mouth dropped open, and here was Sri Govinda, was tall, good-looking, tilak on his forehead, who had been waiting for him to come home. So that was his introduction to Krishna consciousness. And within 2 or 3 years, he was a pure devotee. Very quickly. Took the process seriously. Took everything as fresh. Embraced the principle of faithful, repetitive hearing. Yata kanchanam yadi kamsam rashavita tata diksha vidhanina dvijatpam jayatemanam. It says, just as bell metal can be transformed into gold by the alchemical process, similarly the common man in this Kali Yuga, whatever his shortcomings, by the practice, the application of faithful hearing, just as bell metal becomes turned into gold, anybody who faithfully and attentively hears on a consistent basis will be transformed up to the highest level of Brahminical and Vaishnav culture. Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That concludes our presentation today, which was entitled Turning Bell Metal into Gold. Thank you so much. Who we got with us here? Lakshmi Nrsinga, who says Jaya Prabhupada. Ram Kishore, one could die today, tomorrow, one never knows. Don't waste your time. Start chanting Hare Krishna now. Thank you. And Bear Montes has given us a nice little emoji of an elephant who's emanating hearts, which is certainly inspiring for me. I love the support that you give. I'm going to find that person in this house who's playing some other tape or recording and ask them please not to do it in the future, because it's challenging enough to keep my feeble mind focused as it is without other transmissions going on elsewhere in the house. Thank you for liking. Jimmy and Taruni, Justin, bless your heart. Manasa Ganga's been with every one of our transmissions for months and months. Rakesh, we love you. Your family. Lakshmi Nrsinga from Puerto Rico. Thank you so much, Lakshmi. I'm honored that you would join us. Jai Sri Radha, who has her Radha shop in Florida. You can reach out to her through the comment section if you need any devotional paraphernalia. She carries a wonderful inventory. Damar Corbell. I think this is the first time that you've joined us, Damar. Certainly appreciate it. Hope there's been something here that would entice you to come back in the future. Prashant, I can't wait to go back over the notes and the comments and go through all the links and references that you gave to our scriptural allusions. Subhada Rampur, I think first time. Adi Dev, Adrian Spencer Hayden. You have I saw a new model that you just recently produced. Maybe you can put it in the comments and refresh my mind. If you're interested in dioramas, sculptures, Adi Dev is the man, and he just produced something new. Was it Lord Chaitanya? I forget. Perhaps you can refresh our memories. Ram Kishore, a regular. Sanjay Sharma, a regular. And a new person, Kabir Sharma. Thank you. Achyuta Krishnadas. Thank you. So, Sushil Kumar, Advaitacharya's mother from Croatia. Radmila has joined us this morning. Radhe Sham. And 9 more. Unfortunately, it just says 9 more. So I don't know who the 9 more of you are. But thank you very much for listening, and thank you even more for those of you who liked, and thank you even more for those of you who commented. All this creates busyness emanating from our modest site, and it is integrated into Facebook's algorithms, and it helps to push us further up. Maybe several of these new people came across our broadcast because of your comments, because of your liking, and because you incorporated us into the algorithm and pushed us up to a higher level. So please continue to do the same. Like, comment, and share. And together we can partner to spread the message of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to every town and village in the world. Thank you. And please join me by way of terminating this day's broadcast and chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare